Hi, welcome to the Writer's Toolbox, and today we're looking at societal analysis. Sometimes, when we're reading a text, we don't only think about the effects the language has upon us, but we also think about society. We think about what the text shows us about the society that we live in, and we think about the historical society from when the text was written. So, it's important that we learn how to analyze societies. This is the same as the other types of analysis that we've done because fundamentally analysis is the same. When we do this, we break things down in order to bring out the essential elements or structure. We identify parts and relationships, explain cause and effects relationships, and we make comparisons and draw new connections. Usually, we can do this in a three-tiered model. At level 1, we think about what are the parts of a system. So in literature, these could be rhetorical or literary devices, specific uses of language. Next, level 2, we think what do these parts reveal about the whole? How do they connect together to give us a better understanding as a system as a whole? So this could be what do the literary devices tell us about a character? What do the language choices do about tone? All these sort of things. Then finally, at level 3, we make broader connections to things from outside of a text. So here we could be talking about history, society, larger issues like themes and theory. So, as we've seen, we can do this following a three-tier model where we look at smallest parts at level 1 and identify the effects. We look at a whole in level 2, and then finally we make connections outside of a text. That's how it works for literature, but how does it work for society? Well, basically, it works in a very similar way. At level 1, we think about the smallest parts. We have to be extremely specific about the immediate effects that our evidence has upon the individuals of a group. Number 2, we go beyond the individual. We look at the whole country, society, group, or time in general. So we think about the community, what are the ramifications of the effects on the individual on a larger group or time. Again, being specific. And finally, we make connections outside of that group. So these connections could be across time or they could be across space, looking at different eras, different cultures, and different societies. So, as you can see, when we analyse society, we do this in a similar way to how we analyse literature. Let's have a look at some examples. The Wall Street crash made life extremely difficult for Americans in the 1930s due to high levels of unemployment and less personal wealth. For instance, as a result of the crash and business failure, many Americans lost their jobs. In fact, by 1933, 15 million Americans were unemployed. So, here we have a strong claim talking about 1930s America and how that was difficult for people because of financial problems and unemployment, and we've supported our claim with some strong evidence. When we analyse this, at level 1 we have to look at the smallest part, which again is the individual. We could say, unemployed people had to take any jobs they could. This meant that they'd be taken advantage of. We could say that those people could not afford the rent or mortgages, so they would lose their homes. We could talk about families might have to sell their cars and other items. People in suburbs might struggle to travel. Or we could say that people would stop purchasing new products. So these would be the impacts upon the individual, and then at level 2, we'd have to think about the impacts upon the whole group. So we might say this meant less purchasing and less production within America. We might say less production meant more factory closures or more unemployment across the entire country of America. We could talk about less money circulating in the American economy, the government feeling pressure to support more unemployed people, or we could talk about the rise of soup kitchens and charities in the country. So again, level 1, here we've got some smallest parts and the impacts upon the individual. Level 2, how do those resonate throughout all of society? At level 3, we'd make broader connections. Perhaps we could talk about 1920s America, we could talk about the 2008 financial crash, or we can discuss links to World War II. Basically though, your level 3 is all about what your essay is for. What's the purpose, the prompt or the question of your essay? This would drive your level 3 analysis. For example, if we were asked to write an essay comparing 1930s America to the 2008 Wall Street crash, we wouldn't use this as an opportunity to talk about World War II in any way. That wouldn't be relevant. So, as you can see here, we've done a similar thing to what we do with literature by looking at the impacts on the individual, the smallest units of a system. Then we've considered the connections between this and what these impacts say about a larger whole, the country in general, America. And then from there, we've made some broader connections to things beyond the time or beyond the society in question. This could have been 2008 financial crash, or it could have been World War II or 1920s America. Let's look at one more example where we look at religion and society. India's Hindu caste system benefits those in power as it maintains the status quo and the wealthy benefit from the work of lower caste citizens. For example, jobs reserved for those in the Sudra caste are traditionally some of the lowest in society, including servants, labourers and cleaners. Among the caste is a strong belief that if they work hard and perform their jobs to the best of their ability, they will be reincarnated into a higher caste in the next life. So, again, we've got a strong claim here about how religion functions in a society, and we've explained why that's the case. We've also supported this with some strong evidence after. Level 1. What does this specific evidence tell us about the impacts on the individuals? Well, we could say low caste workers are exploited by wealthy people. We said there's little hope for them for moving up in society. We talk about low caste workers might not want to go to university or gain an education because they believe that upwards mobility is not something that they can achieve in their current life. We could then go on to look at how this impacts a whole and saying that Indian society maintains its status quo easier. We could talk about as a society this means less social mobility, larger populations of illiteracy and high levels of poverty in certain areas, prejudice in society, or we could say that there's no difficulty in filling jobs at lower levels. So we looked at, again, level 1, what's the impact of this evidence upon individual people, and then how do those impacts sort of represent and show us something about a whole system, like in this case, the entire Indian society. Level 3, again, we'd make connections outside of that system, so we could compare it to the American dream. How is the caste system in India similar or different to the American dream? We could talk about other religions, for example, Buddhism. Within Buddhism, there's this idea of karma, but it's within one's life rather than after one's life. We could compare it to British colonial practices and history, or we could talk about other countries in general. But again, this all depends on the purpose of our essay. Why are we writing this essay? If we're writing this essay to talk about how governments or belief systems maintain the status quo, then we could maybe compare it to other religions such as the Buddhist religion in Thailand or other countries, for example. So again here, we've looked at the smallest parts. We talked about the impacts of this evidence upon individual people in society and what that society, the connections between those parts, has really revealed to us about the whole system, in this case India. And then we've gone beyond that by making connections to other things, other places, other times, other religions. So, when you're analysing society, please remember the following things. Number 1, we do this through a 3-tiered system where we look at smallest parts, a whole, and then beyond the whole, the same way we do in society. And you can use certain language and tools to do this. Level 3 analysis is always dependent on the purpose of our writing. We don't just make connections randomly, but we make them to prove our point and the reason for our writing. Thank you.